Welcome to the People's Guild.
Each week we explore the Splinterlands universe with guests from all across the mythical land of Pretoria.
Join us on our journey as we discuss the evolution of the game, the strategy, the lore, and the exciting path that lies ahead.
To support the People's Guild, make sure you subscribe, rate, and review wherever you get your podcasts, and also check us out on PeakD, YouTube, and Twitter.
Send your questions, suggestions, and epic battles in our comments through Twitter or email at thepeoplesguildspl@gmail.com. We'll feature the best in our episodes and maybe airdrop you some prizes.
Thanks for tuning in and enjoy the show.
Welcome back to the People's Guild. Another week, another episode, another wonderful guest. Before we get started, let's get a quick word from our sponsors. And oddly enough, we've been trying to get this guy on for the better part of the last 6 weeks now. And as we called out last week, there were, kind of a flurry of scheduling technical issues that got in the way. And we've finally been able to make ends meet and get Cryptoeater back on. So, we brought the Aqualis official spokesperson to you guys to hype up the business. Let's introduce and welcome Cryptoeater back to the show. Good to see you, man.
Yeah, good to see you too. Hi everyone. I guess official message from myself. Aqualis is doing well. If you guys haven't seen, we actually have a giveaway at the moment on Twitter. 20,000 DECs for anyone who simply retweets and comment your favorite card. This is to celebrate our launch of our Aqualis market, which has been operational for about 101 days now. And we've processed over 108,000 USD worth of transactions. So yeah, just to thank our community, we are giving back a 20,000 DEC prize. Yeah.
That's awesome to hear, man. What do you have? Can you provide a little bit of perspective, market volume percentage? Like how is Aqualis operating compared with somebody like Peak Monsters or Monster Market? What does the pie look like at this point?
Yeah, so at the start, during the first few weeks, we were pretty steady at around a 1% market share, which is, basically nothing. However, since then, we have had certain days when, for example, when Byzantinist purchases a whole bunch of alpha GFLs using Aqualis market, that certainly bring our market share up. I think the best we've had was probably 50% in a day, but on average, we have far less users than all of the other marketplaces. We've found that it's been actually quite difficult just for people to use our market, even though we give the highest cashback out of Peak Monsters and Monster Market. We give 2.8% cashback or 70% rebate. But despite this, the feedback is sometimes people just forget that we exist, which is very common. Sometimes people just don't want to use something new. And I will also admit that our actual front end isn't as smooth as Monster Market or Peak Monsters. So some people who value that side of things do just prefer using Monster Market for the cashback, even though we do give a little bit higher. That's one issue that we have at the moment. In terms of the market share, I think on average, if we say average 20,000 volume a day, that's 2 million over 100 days. We've had about 100,000. So I guess on average over the past 100 days since we've launched, we have approximately 5% of the market. We don't offer land deeds and assets yet. That's been something we've been meaning to get onto for a while, pending our token sale. If we get the funding to do that, that is our next step, is to expand into assets and also land deeds.
Nice. Yeah. How is that token sale going?
Yeah, great. So at the start, one of the best things we did was convert all of our token sale funds into DECs, which was, as DECs went up from the 70, 60 something percent peg up to 90 something, that's been going well for us. However, the reason that's been going up, of course, is Rebellion and lands. A lot of people, including myself, just been hoarding DECs, hoarding SPS. In the process, we've been selling other assets and not buying certain assets. So Despite having a good sale at the start, it has fallen off, tapered considerably, given that everyone is just saving up for lands in Rebellion, which I can fully understand. Yeah.
Yeah.
But that sale is still ongoing. And we do plan on leaving it open indefinitely or until the tokens run out. If we do have a hard deadline, so the hard deadline we're planning to have is whenever we like pretty much know for a fact when we can launch. We want to end that sale because it's meant to be a pre-sale. We want to end that sale at least a month before we have our actual public sale, which, the price will be a bit higher during the public sale. At the moment, the pre-sale is 10 cents, whereas the public sale is planned to be 12.5 cents or above. We say or above because we plan to have several like tranches of sales. But that's still all in the works. We've spoken to a couple of launch pads, and we've also spoken to a centralized exchange about potentially listing our token during as an IEO, like an initial exchange offering. And yeah, it all depends on development now. I know everyone's frustrated about lands being delayed, 2 weeks again, and before that, like it was meant to be out, I don't know, like a couple months ago. But it is like that's just what happens in development. At the start of the year, we anticipated everything to be done in Q3, and that was a very conservative estimate. I personally thought we could be done in Q2, but here we are halfway through Q4, and we're aiming for early next year release. So, yeah, that's just how it is with development. There's just so much you just don't see until you get there, and when you get there, you're like, ah, crap, like it's going to take another couple of weeks. And yeah, for all those people out there who are disappointed, trust me, like Matt is, more disappointed than anyone about all of this, all of these delays. And, he's not someone to give false deadlines or anything like that. One of the first pieces of advice he gave me when I was starting Aqualis is either don't give deadlines, or if you do give a deadline, be sure as hell you're going to meet it. So, yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Well, we've heard that from the team, like, oh, we don't want to give deadlines. And that's why, this one
And we
kind
keep
of surprised
getting
me.
deadlines.
I know we keep getting deadlines and they keep getting missed, right? I mean, yeah, it seemed like, when they announced that November 14th date, Matt seemed so happy and they seemed so confident about it. So, yeah, I can imagine he's kind of a little busted up about having to push it again. So, but yeah, I guess, we'll see when it comes. What is it? The believe, half of what you see and none of what you hear. So I'll half believe land's actually out when I see it hit the main page, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, there's the new release coming up on Mav's server, I think, very soon. I think they said it's a final release. So be excited to test all that out, and you'll have your actual assets. So yeah.
Yeah, I saw. I think it was Investigator that popped that notification in through Discord that they're going to replicate the production server. Is that right?
Yes,
for
I
Mavs?
believe that's what they say. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right. It'll be good to see if I actually have enough cards, but we all know none of us do.
Well, before we go down the rabbit hole that is Praetoria and Splinterlands, let's focus a little bit more on Aqualis. I'm curious, so obviously there's a heavy, I guess, influence from the Splinterlands world on Aqualis. What has adoption looked like for folks outside of Splinterlands for Aqualis? Are things moving according to plan? Or are you guys picking up steam out on kind of external markets? What has that looked like for you guys, and how do you continue to, or how do you plan to continue to expand that side of the business?
Yeah, so at this stage, our core audience is, of course, the Splinterlands community. For me, I believe that that's the most accessible market for me personally, because, of how much, like how long I've been in this community for. Expanding outside of this community has been extremely difficult. The market has been extremely saturated with new projects. DeFi right now is not really like the hot new thing anymore. There's lots of layer twos coming out. Meme coins are back in the spotlight. So people are always chasing these short-term high gains and just extremely high risk products. Whereas what we've really focused on is that building phase, because we don't actually have a readily available like ERC20 token for people to trade. There's no real incentive for people to actually stay. So we've done a couple marketing pushes before, and the problem has always been that sometimes it goes quite well. We get some people in, and when I say some, I might mean like 20 to 50, not major numbers. But over time, they all just disappear simply because there's no token. And if there's no token, there's nothing for them to be hyped about or excited about. They don't really care about the development because it's taking admittedly it's taking a while. And during this time, they could be shifting their focus to other stuff that's in the market already, ready to be bought, and just allocate their funds accordingly. So what we've found is it's a lot easier for us during this development stage to actually just focus on our Splinterlands community, which is why we actually acquired the Splinterlands marketplace, which is why we spent so much time and effort on the Splinterlands Aqualis Guild. And basically, we just want to make sure that this community, we want to support this community, and we hope that this community will support us when we actually launch. The plan going forwards is, I guess, very different. The ultimate vision is, of course, to expand into a massive DeFi network. With our exposure to Splinterlands, we're hoping that that will actually bring more eyes onto Splinterlands. So it's not so much getting the Splinterlands community to use our product, it's more so using the Splinterlands community as our basis. So, we actually have somewhat of a community, because it's like a bit of a snowball effect. If you don't have a community, people look at you like, oh, this looks sus. Why don't they have a community? And they don't want to join. But if you have a community, people are like, oh, okay, we can kind of trust this guy. There's a bit of activity, and they'll be more interested to learn more. So that's kind of what we want to build from the start. It's getting ready for that snowball effect once we're ready to launch. And yes, once we actually do start the marketing process, which is very expensive. I guess on a side note, there are many projects out there which don't have a live product. Most of them have a coin, but they are they have a very massive following. And it all comes down to money. They have the funds to do the marketing. They have the funds to support the community through moderators. They have the funds to basically keep pumping out content. At this stage, since we are I guess technically no longer fully self-funded, we have started using treasury funds and also the pre-sale funds to basically finish our development. But we have mostly been self-funded from day one. And yeah, we just don't have enough funds to be doing the development and marketing at the same time, which is why we do have this pre-token sale now, and we're actually starting a round of seed sales soon. And the majority of those, actually half of those funds, will be used for our initial protocol-owned liquidity for people who aren't really in the DeFi space. Think of it very much as it belongs to the DAO. And the DAO will use it to basically seed our own initial liquidity pools. And then, aside from that, so that half is allocated to that. Aside from that, the majority of the remaining funds will be allocated to marketing. And yeah.
Cool. Can you give us kind of an overview of, what, is going to make Aqualis kind of special in the DeFi space?
Yes, absolutely. So, understand some of you guys might be absolute degens and love DeFi, whereas some of you might have never touched DeFi before. So I will try to make it a bit simple. Aqualis is essentially a DeFi platform built on top of DeFi platforms. So we have forked, basically copy pasted open source projects. We have basically created our own money markets through forked code. And the reason we've done this is because, of course, creating a money markets, basically lending and borrowing, is extremely difficult. It's pretty much, in my opinion, at the forefront of DeFi technology. To create something like that, it is extremely hard. And the actual security and auditing process takes months. So we forked an open source project, which is Aave v3. This gives us the security of knowing that it's a battle tested environment. There's over $10 billion on Aave, v2 and 3 combined. And if there are any issues, for example, if you guys follow the DeFi community, there has been a issue with Aave recently. Supposedly all funds are safe, but they have frozen the borrow and withdraw features for certain assets, but a detailed postmortem will be released. And yeah, so that's basically one side of our protocol is the money markets. What makes us different, however, from Aave, if we're just copy pasting their code, or what makes us different. So the main difference is that we also have a stablecoin trading like liquidity pool. So in DeFi, of course, there's different types of stablecoins. As we know, DEC is paired with BUSD on BSC. However, DEC is paired with DAI or DAI on Ethereum. So, these are two of the, I guess, more popular stable coins. BUSD is getting sunsetted in 2024. So that's kind of, I guess, out of the picture. But the main big ones right now is USDC, USDT, and DAI. I would say those three are the biggest. What we allow users to do is trade these stable coins on chain at a very, very low fee using something called concentrated liquidity. So this basically means that we assume that these stable coins are trading at a one-to-one peg, right? A lot of different platforms have something called price impacts, and this is basically made for volatile coins, for example, Bitcoin or Ethereum. You can't just assume Bitcoin is always trading at 20,000 or 30,000 or something because the price is volatile. Whereas for stable coins, 99% of the time, they are trading within a very, very tight range of maybe 0.999 to 1.001 or something like that. So we basically take advantage of that fact and provide and create a liquidity pool that's very concentrated within the center. There are already liquidity pools that do this. For example, Uniswap v3, you can actually set your own parameters. Curve is a different type of liquidity pool. They don't use concentrated liquidity per se. They use something that's a little bit different. Basically, they use a different type of formula to calculate price impacts that centers it around a certain price. But without, I guess, going into too much detail there, the idea for Equalis is that with these types of liquidity pools, we've created a way for these liquidity pools to basically let each other know how much liquidity they need. So in DeFi right now, every liquidity pool operates sort of like a silo. So they don't really know what other liquidity pools need. They don't really need to know, I guess. But that gives users an opportunity cost. For example, if I want to be a market maker for stable coins, I can't also deposit into lending at the same time because that's just not how it works. Whereas with what Equalis is trying to do is to really enhance that capital efficiency across DeFi. So if I deposit my liquidity into Equalis, and let's say I deposit it into the liquidity pool for trading, what Equalis will do is we have an algorithm that basically, and all of this is on chain, and all of this is done in like a decentralized way where Equalis technically never has access to any of the user funds. All of the algorithm is created by us, but that's done on chain. The actual fund transfer can be done by anyone. It's a completely trustless function. What it does is basically it checks to see if there's a discrepancy between the liquidity pools compared to what it should be based on our algorithm. If there is, it does a transfer, and anyone can call that function. The idea there is that the longer the function hasn't been called for, the higher the reward. And the reward isn't meant to be for for you to actually make money from it. It's basically just to compensate the gas fees associated with it, because if it's done on chain, there's gas fees, which is I guess why I love Hive. There's no fees, but sadly it doesn't support smart contracts yet. But yeah, so that's basically the idea of Equalis is that you can have it gets rid of that opportunity cost of depositing on either a trading pool or a lending pool. You can do 2 in 1. And with that, basically 2 sources of revenue, what we can bring is much better economies of scale, therefore pass on those savings to the end user, allowing us to offer the lowest fees in DeFi without compromising on the depositor rewards. And yeah, that's basically, I guess, well, it wasn't really a summary or anything, but yeah,
That
that's
was the
kind of how
basic
it
version
works.
of it, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
What liquidity pools are you going to start out with?
Yeah, great question. So, for our liquidity pool, it's a stablecoin only one. So it depends on which chain we launch on. At this stage, we are thinking of going on Polygon, purely because Polygon has pretty much the lowest gas fees. It also, in my opinion, with their ZK EVM and moving towards like Polygon 2.0, I think it has a lot of like scalability and future potential compared to maybe optimistic rollups like Arbitrum or Optimism.
Mhm.
So we're thinking of launching on Polygon. At the moment, everything we have is on the Ethereum test net, which I guess, it's a test net, so all the Ethereum's fake. Doesn't really matter about gas fees. It's just making sure we're, testing on an EVM blockchain. And yeah, so I guess we're thinking USDT, USDC, and DAI for the liquidity pool. For the lending side, of course, we'll need to have the same stable coins on lending, but in terms of the actual cryptos, we're looking to have Ethereum, BTC, and of course Polygon if we're launching on Polygon. And just, I guess, a little bit of a tangent there. We're hoping like to go cross-chain relatively soon. So, we want to launch on Polygon first. We'll have our native coin on Polygon, similar to how SPS's native chain is BSC, but they also exist on Ethereum. However, BSC is kind of like the source of truth for SPS because that's kind of like its home chain. Very similar to Aqualis, we want to have a home chain as Polygon, which that's what we want at the moment. It's not set in stone, but we want to go cross chain as soon as possible. Maybe on BSC, maybe on one of these like optimistic rollups like Arbitrum or Base, and we may also go on Ethereum eventually. The reason there is, of course, that's where the majority of capital is, but it's also like extremely expensive in
It's
terms of gas.
expensive.
And
Yeah.
yeah, we don't want to be spending like $10,000-$20,000 just deploying all our smart contracts, which like, I mean, I just said some random numbers, but coming to think about it, it probably will cost, more or less that much, maybe even more. So
Yeah,
yeah,
because it
that's
sounds like
kind
these are
of our
pretty
plan.
involved contracts, right? So sometimes, like the more complicated
Yeah,
the contract is, the more gas is going to require for each transaction. Even hitting that call function is, that'd be, you're looking at 13, $15 or something every time somebody, every time somebody hits
exactly.
that. So that's kind of crazy.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah. So,
I mean, I've always been kind of like a fan of Polygon, and I've been hearing more and more, about it, and even with like Web3 gaming, kind of more seems like
yes.
more Web3 gaming is being developed on that chain. So, is that something where you guys really sat down and looked at, what maybe has the most future potential or usage, or is it just did you notice that growth as well, or what went into the decision to kind of look at Polygon as the main chain?
Yeah, definitely I guess it's more like, yeah, it's a bit of everything, to be honest. Um Recently, I've only very recently started learning about all of these like more technical stuff like ZK EVMs and
Yeah.
like the difference between ZK EVMs and Optimism rollups. Like I always just thought a layer two is a layer two, right? But apparently there are differences. What Polygon is working on, in my opinion, can create like a new level of scalability for the future. I watched a podcast actually with one of their like Sandeep from Polygon, one of their co-founders, and he was saying how like in Web 2, it's basically infinitely scalable, right? You just whenever you want to make something new, you just add some new servers, and yeah, where you go. Whereas on blockchain, there's a limit, right? Like the limit to scalability is how many like transactions per second a blockchain can actually process. And what they wanted to make for Polygon is to make it basically infinitely scalable through these sort of ZK EVMs. He explained it in a bit more detail on how it actually works. I won't go into that because and I'll admit I don't really understand it, but it sounds pretty cool. And yeah, we basically want to be on a chain that is scalable. And honestly, even if they don't achieve that in the near future, Polygon already has one of the lowest gas fees around. Paying 1 cent or 3 cents on transactions compared to, I don't know, like $10 on Ethereum, or even like 20 cents on BSC. So yeah, like that's kind of why we wanted to go on Polygon. And a bit of a side note, very interesting. You mentioned gaming on Polygon. It is definitely like gaming is I think like a lot of people, like it's a massive like catalyst for adoption in Web3. A lot of people believe that Web3 is probably, gaming is probably the lowest hanging fruit for Web3. Before we disrupt the whole, global financial systems, maybe we can get Roblox onto blockchain. It's kind of like, yeah, it makes sense as well. Asset ownership, asset creation, kind of like a decentralized way for people to transfer value through games, interoperability of these assets. I can make a new game and put Splinterland cards in my game if I want, right? That's something that is just insane. Like, honestly, I think the potential there is insane. We've been talking about this probably since 2019. I was saying, like, I hope people create games with Splinterlands assets, because it's good for Splinterlands, but it's also good for their game. Like, if someone made a game that, let's say, like, uses, like, I can open an alpha pack in that game and it gives me some like crazy stuff. Yeah, I'd love to do that. So I'd definitely try out their game. So it's kind of like, good for both sides. It gives utility for Splinterland stuff while giving, like, I guess, free marketing. I guess it's an opportunity cost right now. If you give Splinterland's assets utility, then you kind of take utility away from your own gaming assets, which you might sell. But in my opinion, the marketing would definitely be worth it. And yeah, like if Polygon's scalability and low fees just makes sense for Web3 gaming. So definitely, I think hopefully Splinterlands goes cross-chain more. I think, we're going to talk about proposals a bit later. But given the market making is most likely going to fail, it's at 32% or something approval at the moment. I would love to see more funds being expanded into actually getting more like DEXs, expanding cross-chain into more areas cross-chain. And I'd actually spoke to Matt about this last night. And he's definitely on board. It's just a matter of resources. So hopefully Lands comes out well, and we'll have some time to kind of focus on other attributes and other areas that we could start expanding into. For example, marketing in more like, Web3 degen kind of audiences. And
yeah, before we like switch or jump topics, I do want to just kind of follow up on that. I mean, we've talked with some people on this before about, Hive is, I know people who have been around in the game forever. A lot of the big whales are old school Hive guys and have been around Hive for forever, which is, I guess, maybe like 8 or 9 years at this point. But in this space, that's a long time. But yeah, what, kind of what's your opinion? Because it's, that seems like it's, we're on a smaller blockchain that people haven't really heard of. And, do you think that limits the game? Do you think it would make sense to kind of like try to port the game to a different blockchain? Or do you think kind of trying to do something where, you're doing like cross chain with the assets would give you better, enough exposure to bring people in, and so you wouldn't have to do all that? What's your take on that?
Yeah, so my take has been, always been, it's just, so Hive is incredibly prohibitive. The fact that we're on Hive means that we're one of the biggest blockchain games, but no one has heard of us. So I wrote this on Discord a while ago. So I work at a place called Upside DAO. It's kind of like an office, like a share office in Melbourne, Australia. That's for like, Web3 kind of usually, you mainly for Web3 entrepreneurs, but they have like service providers like accountants, lawyers working here as well. It's basically like WeWork, but for Web3 people. And we have chats every now and then, and like literally no one has heard of Splinterlands. A couple of people has heard of Hive, but never bothered to explore it because they're like, oh, can't use MetaMask, so can't be bothered. It's just another extension, another set of keys. It's just too much work for them. Um, I know someone who works at Illuvium, which is one of the biggest GameFi projects, and yeah, never heard of Splinterlands. He knows like a lot about like every game, right? Bunch of like BSC games, whatever, but never heard of Splinterlands. I've actually recently at like an event, met one person who's heard of Splinterlands. He was an accountant who loved Magic the Gathering. So, I mean, that's fair enough. But yeah, aside from that, out of probably like 20 people I've spoken to, and all of these people are like, really like OG, DeFi or GameFi or just, Web3 people. Like, yeah, out of it's pretty much like no one's heard of us because, and I honestly think it's because we're not on a EVM compatible chain. Um, in terms of porting the game, I think that's too much effort. I would just love to see people be able to transfer all of their assets using MetaMask signatures. So instead of logging on with the Hive keychain, I would love to see if people can just log in with their MetaMask, which I think they already can. I'm not sure if they're able to actually transfer assets using their MetaMask though. But that's kind of like, if they can already, we definitely need to get the word out about that.
Yeah, I know you can
And if
log in, but I don't know if you can sign using your. I'm not sure if your
yeah,
MetaMask can sign. Yeah, I'm not sure.
exactly. Like, yeah, I've seen the login option, but I assume the login option with MetaMask is probably the same as the login option with email, where you still have to copy paste your active key to move assets. I would love to see them to basically allow you to just sign using your MetaMask, and then they'll do some backend stuff to um, using your active key to move stuff. And then if people actually want to get their master keys and private keys, they can sign up and request their keys and get a Hive keychain and all that. I think it's a very like it'll become a much smoother user adoption process for already like native users because honestly that's our target audience. Like I think targeting brand new players who have never touched Web3, that's a bit too difficult at this stage at least. Who we should be targeting are the like the native Web3 users who know how to use a MetaMask, who knows how DeFi works, who knows like what a liquidity pool is. And honestly, there is just so many opportunities in this game that it's just like a waste that more people haven't heard of us. I think that's one of the reasons why I'm so bullish on Splinterlands is because look at where we've gotten, and we basically haven't tapped any of our core market. Um, I've personally onboarded many people who were just non-Web3 users. Like they were just completely new to Web3. They played games, so they just got into Splinterlands and then slowly learned about DeFi and whatnot. Wouldn't it be great if there were people who knew everything about DeFi already, just got in and started playing Splinterlands? And yeah, I don't know. I feel like that it's a huge market for there that's still untapped, and a lot of growth potential for Splinterlands there.
Man, that was my initial reaction as well. When you mentioned, specifically those 20 people that you've spoken to, maybe one of them has heard of Splinterlands. All I see is a bullish flag. I mean that's a massive silver lining.
Yeah.
And that's no shade on any of the previous marketing efforts, but that just tells me that we're not falling on deaf ears. We're just not falling on any ears, right? So longer term, it feels like given all the things that are happening in the Splinterlands ecosystem right now, it's a really exciting time for the first time in many moons. It feels like the community is slowly turning bullish. Is that your objective take, Cryptoeater? Is that ultimately it is a bullish flag that you talk to people who are very involved on a daily basis with the Web3 environments, and they're gamers, and they tick all the boxes for kind of the ideal Praetorian, so to speak. But they've still never heard of Splinterlands. Is that your objective opinion there?
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess not financial advice or anything, but yes, I think it's a very bullish flag. I mean, I mean, I might be a bit biased, because I've always been bullish on Splinterlands. No matter how many mistakes or bad decisions they make, I'm always like, hell yeah. So yeah, it might be a little biased there, but still, like I do believe that, yeah, like it's like in terms of marketing, I mean, I do mean to throw a little bit of shade, like I don't know why we're getting some rapper to like retweet us or something. Like, I don't know what the point of that is. Like being featured in like some Imagine Dragons video, like that's pretty cool, but it sounds honestly like it sounds very like Web 2-esque marketing and not very like not very successful Web 2 marketing. What we need is kind of like a Web 3 marketing specialist because it is extremely different. I know it's hard to kind of just like understand the difference because even I like signing up Aqualis, we had a Web 2 marketing specialist, and he's actually been incredibly like willing to learn new things, get into the Web3 space and just learn how Web3 marketing works. But yeah, it's incredibly different. Like simply doing like, I don't know, search engine optimization that's like, I don't even know if Splinterlands does any of that stuff, but just simply doing that is it's just not going to work. You need to have those like KOLs, like key opinion leaders, like influencers or whatnot, making videos. You need to be on those like, I don't know, Twitter spaces, like Telegram AMAs, and that's how you build a Web3 brand. That's how meme coins end up shooting up to $1 billion market cap with literally no utility. It's just because people have heard about them. They keep seeing the same brand. There's like I don't know, like I heard this somewhere, people need to see your brand like 7 times or something before they even like start considering it. Whereas at the moment, we're at 0 for most people. So we've definitely got a long way to go in terms of our actual brand, like Splinterlands as a brand. But yeah, no, like that, of course, that just means a huge untapped market. Yeah.
Very cool. Yeah. So you mentioned some of the proposals we've had up recently, and you've put a couple up. One of them was to replace the BUSD with USDC, and that's
Mm.
pretty self-explanatory with
Yeah.
BUSD being kind of sunset there. I don't know if you want to talk about the other one, your unstake SBS proposal.
Yeah, sure. So, that one has, I mean, I've been meaning to put that one up since, probably like a year or even longer. Pretty much not long after SPS. Actually, yeah, no, not long after SPS came out. So it's probably been like a couple years. I've been wanting to get this thing done. The idea there is twofold. So flexibility. I want to make sure that people who are staking has the flexibility to unstake. Staking doesn't necessarily like it shouldn't necessarily mean lock, right? Staking could just be putting your like depositing your assets into a certain pool and earning yield from it, and you can just take it at any time. That's also staking. People kind of have this idea that staking must be locked for some certain time, and that definitely makes sense in a way that you're basically committing to the ecosystem by saying, look, I trust it so much that I'm willing to give away my freedom to access my funds. But the problem with that is that some people might not want to give away that freedom. They might just want to ensure that they can always have access to their funds. And another thing is sometimes people want to give away that freedom, but then unexpected things happen and they just need funds, right? You might, something bad might happen and you might have some emergency, you need funds, and SPS would have been a great way to get those funds, but you can't. Or if you see a great opportunity, like some random meme coin that you want to buy, and you're like, oh, I don't have any money left because I lost it all in the last meme coin. You could be like, okay, well, SPS, I could sell my SPS and buy back more when this meme coin goes times 10. And just these might be bad examples, but it's just giving people that flexibility to have access to the funds when they need it. Of course, flexibility has to come with a penalty. Otherwise, there's no point of having, any sort of time lock or anything. So originally I was thinking a 4% burn, if you want to depending on how much like a flat 4% burn for however much you want to actually access. But people were generally saying that that's a bit too low. So I've updated that to 5%. I personally, in the proposal, it also mentions that I personally do want it to be a lower than a higher amount. I thought 4% is also quite low, but like reasonably low, not too low. I think 5% is also within that range of reasonably low, and that's purely because I want people to actually use the feature, right? There's no point creating a feature. It's a bit of tech debt for the team as well to actually create this. Matt said it's not too hard, but definitely with all the testing and all of the creative side of things, like creating a new button for it, maybe even a new menu for it, or some warning with it. It's going to be a bit of work, right? It's not going to be like an overnight thing. It's just done. So once it's done, I want to make sure people actually use it, find value in using it, and yeah, that's kind of like the thinking there. Like a lot of people were saying that it's like then this was like pre-proposal, and I sent it to people. People were saying that it kind of like it's no longer like SPS at staked is no longer out of circulation. And although that's true, like this proposal essentially makes it no longer out of circulation, but I've personally never viewed it as out of circulation anyway, because you could always just get access to it within about a month, which is, in the grand scheme of things, not a very long time. If someone wants to sell their SPS, or if they have to sell their SPS eventually anyway, I'd much rather they sell 95% of the SPS now and burn 5% of it, rather than selling 100% of their SPS over the next 4 weeks. Because, like reducing that sell pressure or reducing that volatility, it technically doesn't really add much value to the ecosystem. Like you could say that a coin that's more like, because if people sell it over 4 weeks, it reduces that volatility, and the coin price looks more stable. But I don't personally, I don't think our audience, or like people who buy the coin, I don't think it should be people who are looking at the price and thinking, it's stable, so I buy it. Oh, it's more volatile, so I won't buy it. People who look at prices like that are very obviously in there to do a quick trade and then get out, right? If people are put off by a bit of volatility, then so be it. They're probably not the right people we want buying SPS anyway. We want people like, I don't know, Mr. Vugtis, who's just keeps, I don't even know how much stuff he has now. I just see his SP. I stake more. I'm like, maybe I'll catch up soon. I just see, oh, okay, he staked even more. Cool. So yeah, that's the kind of people we want.
If you're looking to just kind of flip it, right? Like you're probably not even bothering to stake it in the first place because you want to have that option. I mean, this is, maybe more people will be more interested in playing the game and getting the rewards out of the game and trying to buy or rent assets to do that if they have some more flexibility with being able to get those rewards,
Yeah, exactly right. Like that's, if you're a flipper, you're not going to stake it, obviously. But if you're a flipper now, you can stake it, and then at if it goes down, you've had some passive income with it, and if it goes up more than 4%, you've still got that, like it's the 5%. You've still got that, like gain. The downside is limited, and the downside is actually like the amount of downside is going down every day as you get more staking rewards, whereas the upside is unlimited. So it's like, I don't know, it's a good I guess maybe incentive for more flippers to stake. I don't know. We'll see. But yeah, I just think that it's long overdue to have this sort of flexibility. I don't know if people will actually use it. Like I would only have personally used it during those random Hive pumps, when Hive just randomly pumps 50%. I would have loved to be able to unstake my SPS, because those pumps almost always retrace, right? So it's almost, I won't say guaranteed, but like historically, you would always have the opportunity to buy back your SPS at a lower price. And usually it pumps a lot more than like just 4 or 5%. So I personally would have used this feature multiple times. And I'm hoping, and I know other people who would have used this feature for other reasons. So yeah, I hope this passes, and it's just a new source of burning SPS for us.
Yeah, it looks great. Like but I love, this is one of the great examples of how the DAO should operate. I love that you put forth this proposal, and there's a little bit of salt in the commentary that's kind of surrounding the post, but for the most part, it's constructive criticism. How do we make this kind of bulletproof?
Yes,
I'm curious. Is there a precedent that has been set in other staking kind of protocols that kind of led you to, believing that this should be the same case with SPS? And I know you mentioned like reasonably low percentage, or something that's not going to counteract the whole policy of allowing for instant unstaking. What is kind of that threshold in your mind for a reasonable expectation of burned SPS percentage?
So I mean, in terms of like the precedent, if there's any other DAOs or staking protocols that do this, I guess I mean, all of the DAOs that I use, they have some sort of like early withdrawal mechanic. But like it's a lot more in terms of percentage, but it also makes sense because their staking periods are a lot longer. For example, I use a DeFi protocol called Alpaca Finance. They have they're actually reworking their staking because of basically low APRs. But what their system used to be is that you could stake it up to 52 weeks. The longer you stake it for, the more rewards you have. So think about it as kind of like a linearly scaling multiplier. And the longer you stake it for, the larger portion of the rewards pool you get based on your like however many alpaca tokens you staked. And if you want to withdraw early, it's like 0.75% multiplied by the number of weeks, right? So if it's like 52 weeks, then you'll be looking at, I don't know, like 30-40% penalty compared to 5% for Splinterlands. It's crazy, right? You'll be losing like 40% of your stake. But I guess the key difference there is that they're charging 0.75% per week, whereas we're charging 1.25% per week. So technically, we're still charging a higher fee in terms of per week staked. But the absolute amount in terms of like the maximum fees we can charge is much lower because we don't stake it for as long. So that's kind of like where like originally I was thinking 1% per week, but then people saying it's too low, so I changed to 1.25%. I personally don't want to see it any higher, but if this fails and the general consensus is that it needs to be higher, I'll put up a new one and make it higher. But yeah, so that's kind of like where the idea came from. It's just that a lot of other DAOs have this already. And for a bit of context, like Alpaca Finance, they've burned a fair bit of tokens. I think they're a pretty small market cap coin as well, similar to Splinterlands. I think around the 20 million-ish range. They've burnt, I think, over 80,000 worth of tokens in the past like year or so. Just from the early withdrawal fees. I don't know, Splinterlands might do more, might do less, but there's a bit of context regarding on like how many tokens has been burned. And yeah, it's permanently out of like circulation. So yeah.
How about you raise a good point. I've heard lots of people kind of raise the idea of heavier rewards for lengthier stakes. Is that kind of the next step in your proposal plan is to introduce something like that to Splinterlands? I mean, I know, I've heard Matt Clark talk about it time and time again. He'd love to lock up his SPS for a full year if he could. And I have to imagine, I'm looking at the rich list right now, and most of these guys that are leading the way with some of these numbers are just absolutely absurd with total volume of SPS that's staked. I would have to imagine that the bulk of that would be immediately secured longer term if that was an option. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so originally I was going to put that up straight away, but what I've learned with my previous proposal with the 2% burn from market fees is that community is obviously more likely to accept incremental change rather than like a massive change. So short answer is yes. Back in whenever SPS started, whenever staking started, I've always thought that a time-weighted staking is appropriate. It makes more sense to reward longer-term like believers, I guess. Any staking protocol I've ever been in, I just stake it for the max period because, why am I here if I don't believe it long-term, right? So it only makes sense. I've heard, however, some people have been against that idea. correct me if I'm wrong, Cryptomancer, I don't know if he'll listen to this podcast, but I think Cryptomancer once mentioned that he is against this sort of idea. I think I thought if it was Cryptomancer or someone else with a similar name, but they mentioned that basically it sounds like it's very like gimmicky or like very Ponzi-esque. I don't really agree with that.
Is that
But
are you referring to Tails from the Cryptmancer? The other
no,
content creator or the dev at Splinterlands?
the dev. From memory,
Gotcha.
it was from the dev, but also, I could be wrong. It's quite a while ago. Someone actually sent me a screenshot of that because that was literally the time I was floating around the pre-proposal to get to basically do the time-weighted staking. However, there's a lot of issues with that, given, for example, how would you count ranked rewards, right? Is it automatically staked at the amount of time you've staked it for, or is it staked for less? Then maybe you want to have like a playing account and a staking account. It creates a bit of like difficulties there. Also, how do we transition the stakes? Do we just automatically like stake people's SPS for 4 weeks and then they can increase the stake if they want? In terms of tech debt, it's also quite a big effort compared to just early withdrawal. I just haven't found the right time to kind of put that through, but I've always wanted the early withdrawal because I think that's like a very baseline kind of requirement. Which is why I've put through the early withdrawal one first. Whenever the time feels right, I'll probably put through the time weighted one. I feel like that one will probably be a bit more controversial. And I'll be honest, probably just don't have the energy at the moment to be answering all the comments and whatnot associated with that. So I'll put this one through. I did a lot of like every proposal I put through, except for the swap liquidity pool one, because that one's pretty self-explanatory. Every other proposal I do, it's very like there's a lot of like homework, right? I pretty much only put it up after I've done a fair bit of homework and just like I think it's going to pass. That's when I'll put it up. I'll never just like blindly throw it up and see how it goes. So there's always a lot of like amendments and edits beforehand. It's a lot more work goes in than like what meets the eye, I guess. So whenever the time is right, I'll probably put up the extend staking one and we'll see how that one goes.
Cool. I was wondering too about we had Clayboy on last week and he was talking about some proposals with both with paying a market maker and kind of for the DAO to stop rewarding pools with SPS that do not have an SPS pair. And I, being as you're a DeFi guy, I wanted to kind of get your take on both those ideas.
Yeah. So I guess the first one about the market making. So are you referring to the proposal that's currently failing, or is this like another one that
No, yeah, the one that's seems like it's getting shut down pretty hard. I don't know if you voted either way on that one.
Yeah, so I've left a comment on that one, and it basically just states that I want to see more money going towards marketing and also expanding onto more cross-chain DEXs. I am personally not a big fan of centralized exchanges unless you're a big coin. I feel like listing on centralized exchanges is okay. I mean, Crypto.com, I guess, is quite good for like potentially for like if US citizens can buy SPS directly via like Crypto.com. But the problem there is the fees are like quite like extraordinary. If you're doing like the instant swap type stuff, I mean, any platform that uses instant swap, they usually charge a fee plus a spread, which means you're just getting gutted like in terms of fees. If you check the price you buy at, and then if you check the price you sell at, and then check the difference in that, it's usually crazy, like 4 or 5% sometimes. But people don't really notice it because they only say, oh, we charge like 0.5% fee, because technically the spread itself isn't an actual fee.
I think Crypto.com is just the spread.
Is it?
Okay.
I
use that. I do use that for kind of my onboarding fiat into crypto.
Yes.
And yeah, my understanding is it's just the spread. Which I think is I don't check it. I'm typically just I think it is kind of like close to it's only a couple percentage usually.
That's
Whenever I
not bad, to
actually
be
sit down and
honest.
look at it, it's not terrible. I don't, and I mean, I'm not a huge volume trader. I don't,
Yeah.
it's not like I get any sort of discounts or anything, but yeah, then I know if like you want to use like a credit card or something, then yeah, you're gonna get charged a fee. But if you do like a bank transfer, a wire transfer, it is just the spread. So I mean, I bought SBS um on my crypto.com account before and bought, like, if I'm gonna, maybe try to buy and just, if there's something where I think SBS is gonna pump a little bit and sell, like I'll just do it through there. And I've done that a few times, not often. And so I don't,
Yeah.
worry about dealing with any like then you don't have to worry about like gas fees or any type of difference you're gonna get, whether you're trying to bring something into Hive and bring it back out. So but yeah.
Yeah, no, that's very fair, to be honest. I think that's why I mentioned crypto.com, is that I know that a lot of US citizens use it as kind of like their fiat gateway. Um, as an Australian, I don't, because Kraken, I use Kraken. They charge a 0.2% fee to convert my AUD into USDT or something like that, and then I just move that on chain and then just do everything on chain. Sometimes I move it to Binance to buy Hive, then I move the Hive from Binance onto Hive, then from Hive onto Hive Engine. It's a bit of a process, but you save fees, and if you save fees, then that's free money, in my opinion. So but yeah, like crypto.com, I can understand is definitely something that people will miss. But the idea there is that, like, Ethereum has large fees. BSC isn't supported by, I would say, the majority of exchanges anymore. Like, you can't withdraw your funds onto BSC. You have to, like, what I personally do is I withdraw the funds onto Binance using, like, I don't know, Tron or Polygon or whatever the cheapest withdrawal fees are. And then after I withdraw it onto Binance, I then withdraw my USDC or whatever back onto BSC. And then buy SPS or DEC there. Generally, that's still cheaper than buying it straight away on crypto.com. But of course, that's like 3 or 4 steps compared to just like one click. I can understand, especially if it's like a time sensitive matter where, like, I don't know, Matt just released that a VC is buying 1 billion SPS. You want to buy that as soon as possible. You might not always have the time to do that. But that's still an
And the
opportunity.
US too is just, we're so limited on what exchanges we even have. So it's like, yeah, I mean, crypto.com is probably, because like a lot of it's just like Coinbase and Gemini, which don't even like have,
Yeah.
yeah, they're not even on BSC. It's like, you want to be on BSC, like you're just so limited to what you can even do in
Yeah.
the US,
So,
which is such a huge pain.
like, I think the biggest thing is just, as long as you have a crypto, like, as long as you can convert your USD into, let's say, USDT, you can use that USDT and transfer it to Binance.com or Binance US or whatever. And you can transfer that, you can use, I don't know, like Tron or Polygon, usually the two go-tos, because it's the lowest transaction fees. And then after you transfer it to Binance US, I'm sure, like, I don't know myself, but I assume Binance US can transfer to BSC. If they can't, then wow.
No,
But
they can.
I
Yeah,
assume
no,
they
they do.
can.
They do. They
Okay.
do. Yeah.
But yeah, as long as you get your actual fiat into a stable coin and move that stable coin onto Binance US, you can then transfer that onto BSC. But leading up from that, though, what I was going to say is also one of the reasons why I really want to see SPS go cross-chain more. That's what, like, basically like the comment I left on that proposal is that BSC isn't supported. Ethereum gas fees are too high. I want to see SPS on Polygon. If SPS is on Polygon, then that solves a lot of the issues that removing these market makers will create. So no more market makers. It's harder for people to get fiat into Splinterlands. But hold on, you can just buy USDT and move that onto Polygon, and you can buy SPS there. So that's kind of like the reasoning why I want to, because okay, so the market making fees are just, in my opinion, like, I never knew that how high they were in terms of like like the retainer. I know they, you need to give them liquidity. That's fair. That liquidity is still yours. You still get returned it at the end of the term. But I just had no idea that their retainer was so high. And it's not something that I think the DAO can really afford at this stage. It's not something that I think adds that much value. A one-time payment to create a bridge to Polygon, maybe some SPS incentives to incentivize the Polygon pool. I think that would be much better value, and it also opens us up to a whole new market, right? Like audience from Polygon, which as you mentioned before, I guess is much more GameFi like focused at the moment. It opens up a lot of doors there. So I would love to see another proposal basically say, we've saved this much funds from the market making side. What do we want to do with it? I would love to see a proposal basically saying, let's expand onto Polygon. And I'm thinking of maybe working with Clay on that to create a proposal similar to that. And if he, I mean, otherwise I can just create one myself, I guess. But I would like if Clay had his name on it so he can answer all the questions, since I don't get paid. So yeah, so that's kind of like the idea there. And your second question was about the LPs. So removing any reward for SPS, without an SPS, I guess like interaction. And I've thought about this a lot actually, and I've gone back and forth on this. So at the start, my immediate thought was like, no, this doesn't make sense. We'll have no liquidity for DECs and whatnot. But then I realized, I mean, I guess this is a bit of alpha. If you provide DECs at 1% fee on Uniswap V3, not Uniswap, sorry, on like PancakeSwap V3, during the, when DECs were quite volatile, you were getting like much more yield compared to depositing it as like on V2. Of course, your imperm loss would be much higher, and I don't suggest people just randomly using PancakeSwap V3 without understanding impermanent loss. But yeah, your impermanent loss would be higher, which basically means as DEC goes up, you're selling more of it, which means you basically, like if DEC keeps going up, you're losing money compared to V2. But once it's already up and you have that tight range of maybe between 90 cents to a dollar, 90% and 100% peg, and it's still quite a lot of market activity, you can actually get higher APR compared to the SPS incentives. So I was thinking, maybe we don't actually with DECs at near peg, and if we can kind of like let it stay at near peg, we don't actually need these sort of SPS incentives for people to be getting the like relatively high APR. So I'm like thinking that's we could actually just remove that completely. But then at the same time, of course, there's a lot of like back and forth. At the same time, that would essentially create it would be removing one utility from DECs is one problem. So the reason that we're getting so high APR from the V3 pools is because not many people know about it. I think at one point I had like 80% of the liquidity. If let's say 2 people add it, then the rewards won't be necessarily halved, but it would probably go down 30 to 40%. And if 3 people or 4 people add it, rewards will keep going down. Ultimately, the liquidity will be significantly lowered. And if the liquidity we have is lowered, where does the additional DEC go? Well, if people see they're only getting 3% APR now, they might just sell their DECs. And that kind of, goes against what we're trying to do, bringing DECs to beg, burning SPS. It's kind of it's just kind of against what we're trying to do here. So I was thinking that as well. And, it's, the other thing is with concentrated liquidity, it's concentrated. So at a certain point, there's no liquidity left. So if everybody adds liquidity between 0.009 to 0.0009 to 0.001, so like 90% to 100%, that means as soon as DECs go down below 90% peg, there's no more liquidity left on BSC, and no more liquidity left on Ethereum Uniswap. The only liquidity that will be remaining would be on Hive. So people trying to sell their DECs on BSC will literally just not be able to sell. So, that'll be an issue as well. Of course, the market might adjust. And for example, if I see DECs going to 90% peg, I might move my liquidity range from 80% to 100% instead of 90% to 100%. But if that happens, I'll have to sell DECs because the definition of impermanent loss is that you always end up with more of the asset worth less. So if my liquidity range is at 90%, and DEC is trading at 90%, that means my liquidity pool is now holding 100% DEC. And then if I want to, let's say, move the range from 90 to 100, from 90 to 100 to 80 to 90, and DCs are currently trading at, let's say, like 89, I need to sell approximately 90% of my DCs to make this new liquidity pool. And that's basically just like a domino effect of if DCs gets low, DCs will continue to get lower and lower and lower. And obviously that's if we don't consider market forces such as people saying, "Oh, discount," and buying it. But the kind of like the natural forces pushes it in the same direction. Like the moment, like there becomes a much higher momentum effect in the market, which wasn't there before. So those are some issues I have been considering with just completely removing it. The other thing, of course, is the DAO. The DAO could provide liquidity for the actual pairs. I mentioned to Clay that the DAO could be providing liquidity between the 90 and 100% peg range. But the problem with that is then the DEC is currently held by the DAO, and its intention of these DECs is to be out of circulation. The definition of market making is putting it on the market, right? So the DAO would technically then be selling DECs, which makes it harder and harder for us to reach peg, especially if let's say if the DAO puts up, I don't know, 200 million DECs and supplies, I don't know, like 200K stable coins to buy. Two things will happen. If we're reaching peg, it makes it harder and harder to reach peg. But the flip side is if DECs go down, the DAO is essentially buying DECs at 90% plus, right? And I don't want to see the DAO doing that because obviously DAO stables are very precious. I don't want to see the DAO spending 200K buying stable coins at 90% plus peg when they're going down, right? So it's just like imperm loss is a pretty big issue there. It's like if we assume DCs are never going below 90%, then I mean it could be a good solution, but I personally don't want to risk that. So all in all, after all of these considerations, there's just so much like downside and upside to it that I think it might be better just to stick with the status quo. I personally think the only one that I want to change is swap Hive and vouchers. I want to see that become SPS and vouchers. But the original, I mentioned this from literally day one as well, but the original issue with that is that purchasing vouchers with fiat, it gets routed through Swap Hive. So if we change the liquidity pool to SPS and vouchers, apparently then we can't buy vouchers with fiat through the in-game systems or something like that. That was the explanation given to me probably like a couple years ago. I don't know if that's still how it works. But I would still love to see that, go to SPS, because right now, all of that liquidity is in Hive. So we're basically giving Hive a SPS reward. I would love to see, giving SPS the SPS reward. So that's kind of my 2 cents on the whole thing. Yeah.
No, thanks. That's great. That's good to get your take on that. Yeah, I didn't think of that angle. I mean, you can't buy vouchers with fiat though, right? Through the in-game system. I thought the only way is to get it through stakes. Yeah, I thought you could only get it from staked or through nodes, right?
I mean,
maybe they just don't want to lose the ability to offer it at one point or some point.
Yeah. I have no idea, to be honest, because I've never tried. But you can buy SPS, you can buy DECs through the in-game system, and what they do is just basically route it through the Hive Engine pools. I don't know. I don't even know if they route it through like the Hive Engine order books or the Hive Engine like liquidity pools. But basically they route it through that, and they use Swap Hive. And yeah, so if we change to SPS, like yeah. I don't know if you can even buy vouchers with fiat like through the in-game thing. And yeah, if we can't, then that's very easy for us to just swap it over. But at the same time, I believe we definitely should be able to, because if we want to be like so if we want to like appeal to Web 2 gamers and then tell them that actually you need to be able to use Hive Engine, or you need to have these vouchers already, or else you can't buy like packs at a discount, then that's terrible like user experience, right? Like you want to be able to make sure that like a Web 2 user can buy anything they need with credits or with the credit card.
Credit card, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that'll be interesting when land comes out, and we've got 100 new tokens or whatever it's going to end up being.
Yeah.
Yeah, so let's circle the conversation back to land. So we were talking a little bit about it off air. You kind of briefly shared your perspective on the most recent delay. It's a lot of people are kind of calling it a 2-week delay, which I get. But grander scheme of things, it's we're pushing 4 months, 4 months of delays at this point. Land has been primary focus of development team for I guess the better part of the last year at this point. We talked about not providing dates any further, and here we are. There was another date that has passed us by with still no 1.5 on the production server.
And then they gave another date. They didn't just say, "Hey, we got to figure this out." It'll be they gave another hard date.
Yeah.
Well, yes, they did. So I think the community seems pretty torn. I think a lot of folks felt pretty stung by this delay because it's the first of the new era of leadership, and that being since the most recent kind of restructuring of the organization. And Matt came out and very like Kep mentioned, very confidently stated November the 14th is the day we're getting 1.5. Get your stuff ready. The market responded. I think almost immediately we saw DEC hit peg for the first time, and gosh, who knows how long. SPS has continued to rise, and I sort of expected to see both of those things plummet on the heels of that. I guess it was Town Square that Matt made that announcement, but they've continued to hold strong. SPS is continuing to rise. DEC is still flirting with peg kind of on a daily basis. So it seems like all things considered, confidence is still there. I think there is some disappointment. I definitely felt a little bit more disappointed than I had in the past with delays, just because it was the first of this new iteration of Splinterlands leadership. But at the same time, I get it. I think without being a dev and having the development perspective, it's been equated to we're essentially creating a brand new product. Everything that we've done in the past that plays into Splinterlands running as smoothly as it does is really irrelevant, because we're building a brand new platform that is land. So can you share some perspective on what are your thoughts on an additional delay? How are you kind of coping with that? How has that played into your adjusted strategy? What's where's your head at with all this?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, a lot of I guess questions there, but the main takeaway here is like the new. I guess the biggest takeaway here is like the new era. I think that's kind of what hit me the most. Because I think we spoke about this off air. When I started Aqualis, one of the things Matt told me was deadlines. Like just don't have hard dates. Never set hard dates unless you're like 100% sure you can hit it. So I was very confident in his ability to hit this, because that's kind of the advice he's given me. But I spoke to him last night about it, and it is what it is. He just didn't feel comfortable given how many code changes there were recently. He wanted to make sure that everything goes smoothly when we actually launch. And I fully respect that. Like he knows that he's going to, get a lot of shit for just delaying it, given that this is his first hard like deadline. But he does value, I guess, making sure everything runs smoothly more than, I guess, saving face, which is one perspective that I've chosen to kind of comprehend this as, is that, like he would rather make sure that the community is safe and everything runs smoothly than make sure that he personally doesn't lose face. So, I think that's respectable, and I'm that's kind of the narrative that I'm personally choosing to go with. It was, I guess, a mix of disappointment and relief because I'm like, holy crap, I don't know if I'm ready for lands yet. But at the same time, I was like, damn, I was really looking forward to lands. So that's kind of how I was coping with it. In terms of like strategy, like it's same old, same old. Like it gives me 2 more weeks to sell time crystals. If anyone wants some, message me. I have like a surplus of like 100,000 time crystals still. So if you want to buy some, let me know. Like yeah, I honestly think like I'm not sure if we spoke about this last time I was here with you guys. I forgot what we actually spoke about like exactly, but I think lands is technically a positive sum for the Splinterlands ecosystem. The SPS rewards that we've been earning passively will mean like something that we're getting for free will now need to be worked for. So that has two implications. The first implication is that I guess the innate value of lands technically will go down purely because by owning lands before, you're automatically entitled to SPS. Whereas now, by owning lands, you're not really entitled to any rewards unless you work the lands. So the additional capital required to work the lands technically comes out of the innate value of lands. So that like from a purely economic perspective, you would think that land prices are going to go down after this change. But of course, that's not how the market works. The like markets are purely like sorry not purely but like highly speculative. Just the fact that lands is going to come out might mean land prices go up, who knows. And I guess the main thing that like the main takeaway here is that like that's the land side. The actual economy side is that before all of these cards or whatnot that were just maybe just lying there, maybe on rental markets or DECs that was in liquidity pools just lying there, all of this will need to be put to work. There will be a objective like shortage of cards. Like by shortage I don't mean like we don't have enough. By shortage I mean less than before. Less than a before amount of cards on market. Rental prices might go up, bots might be less profitable, so there might be less bots. If there's less bots, there might be less battles. That might mean SPS rewards for ranked might go up. It's just kind of like the start of a new cycle, in my opinion. With all of these cards working lands, there can't be as many cards playing ranked. And if we're targeting max level cards and like whatnot, then you're going to be seeing less competition at the top of Splinterlands. You're going to be seeing more SPS rewards in your Diamond Champion leagues. And I reckon that's going to create a bit of a snowball effect there. More rewards, more rental, like, people might justify higher rental prices. Higher rental prices might mean card values go up again. More market volume, more DCs burned. Thanks to that 2% burn proposal. No worries, guys. And all of this is just kind of like like they say flywheel effect. I like the term snowball, but yeah, I think like this wasn't really your question, but I think that's what lands 1.5 is ultimately bringing us. It's just a bit of like economic relief in terms of just how much like shit we've been through this bear market. Like, Chaos Legion packs, my max level alpha deck went from like 100 and something thousand market price down to like less than 20,000. It's this is just a bit of economic relief before the big actual expansion, like Lands 2.0, right? Like I think if all things as well, Lands 2.0 would just be the initial Lands release. We wouldn't even have a Lands 1.5 because like what's the point of Lands 1.5, right? But given the market that we're in, given the conditions we're in, 1.5 is, I think, extreme. Like it's at an extremely good time as well, where the market's starting to pick up, and it'll just help the economy of the game a lot. And we are a Web3 play to earn or play and earn game. It's like asset prices going up is probably the best marketing, to be honest. And yeah, that's kind of my take on the whole thing. So that's why I'm personally excited to see 1.5, and that's why I was personally a bit disappointed to see it delayed. But at the same time, shit happens, and yeah.
Interesting to see the rewards going up even higher. I mean, I'm only playing gold, but sometimes like over 5 SPS per win. It's like that's That's fairly significant, in a lot of places. So that's
Yeah,
yeah, it's a
actually,
lot, because we were before back in the old days when it was
yeah.
like, wow, you were getting like point 0.4 SPA, or like less than that for a win when it was just like tons of bots. So yeah, it's pretty intense with the modern format.
Yeah, no, one of my guild members, he actually earned 11 SPS in a gold league battle, but when he promoted to diamond, he was only getting 4 SPS. So yeah, 11 SPS at the top of gold, if anyone's interested.
Wow, that's a wild return. I mean, that's what I was getting 11 SPS in Champ 2 in Modern for at end of season it starts to trickle down and you're closer to
Yeah.
6, 7, 8. But yeah, when the getting's good at the early part of the season, you can get, between 10 and 20 SPS with, a 10x multiplier in Champ, and to hear that that's available at the top of gold, that's just absurd, man. That's crazy. That's
Yeah.
yeah, that's big. I mean, that's at SPS creeping closer to 2 cents. That's 20 cents a win right there. That's crazy.
Yeah, yeah,
That is. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, yeah, you can start couple bucks a day isn't bad,
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I mean, it's definitely not bad for a human, but like, botnets at the moment. Oof.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about so we've heard land, and Matt has kind of said beyond 1.5 he doesn't really like associating I guess the traditional coding naming convention of 1.6 1.7 1.8 and moving its way to 2.0 whenever that is. I mean, do you have any kind of insight what to expect between 1.5 and 2.0? I mean, we've heard stuff like land surfing. We've heard stuff like the in-game markets for grain.
Yeah.
What other kind of big tick boxes do you expect us to see throughout the iterative process of getting from 1.5 to 2.0?
Yeah, so I guess I'm not sure if like some of you guys might know, some of you might not. But I do like I did work with Matt for the Lands 1.5 white paper, and I've been working with him for Lands 2.0 as well. Um, but of course, all of this information is protected under like an NDA, so I can't really share too much. I was thinking like, what can I share, what can't I share? But I guess I just be conservative and just say that yes, everything you've mentioned is stuff that is, I guess, not stuff that we've really talked about, to be honest, because we mainly talk about, what should we have on 2.0, what should we really be doing for 2.0. I've had a lot of suggestions to Matt. I mean, that's pretty much like my job. I don't really write like a lot of the white paper. I just read what he does and then say, actually, what about this? Or actually, this doesn't seem right. Or sometimes I say, actually, here's a cool feature. And most of the time he's like, yes, that is cool, but we, cool isn't really like, we just need like, this was for 1.5 mainly, I had a lot of stuff like, oh, this will be really cool. He's like, no, we just need to get like the most basic thing out there as soon as possible. I'm like, okay. And then everything's like, save it for 2.0. So, 2.0 has been very exciting, like in terms of brainstorming. In terms of major features coming out before 2.0, honestly, like land surfing is one thing that I'll be honest, I'm also not sure if they're doing this like, internally what they're doing about it. I've always been a bit mixed about land surfing. I would have loved to have some kind of lands rental kind of thing, but at the same time, I also admit lands rental is too hard to manage. Maybe it's actually better if someone could just like sit on my land and be like, here, take some of my money. I just want to work your land for you. Like a permissionless, decentralized space. And then, if I want to work my cards, I don't know, I just shoo them away or something. But yeah, that's kind of like my take on land surfing. Grains markets and stuff like that. That's, I think, a huge oversight not to have it in 1.5. I think that's a necessity. I personally would have thought that, with delays, they would have just, taken an extra week or two to just slap that in. Maybe it takes longer than a week or two. Maybe that's why they've chosen not to slap it in. But I think that needs to be, I know he doesn't like the naming conventions of like 1.6, 1.7, but maybe 1.5.1 would have to be grains market. Like that's just like it's absolutely a necessity. Because I'll be honest, like grains for one DEC each is extremely expensive. I don't think anyone should be paying that price. But of course, if there's no market, you have to pay that price. And I think that's just a huge inefficiency there. I would love to sell my grains at, I don't know, 50% below that. But I'll be honest, fair value, I think they would worth less than 50% that. There might be a huge rush for grains at the start before people start grain producing. And everyone's just rushing to produce SPS, because one thing I guess people, this is a bit of, I guess, personal strategy that I was planning not to share, but you'll hear it first here. One thing that people don't always necessarily consider is that for grains in research, it's a fixed amount no matter how many people are producing it, right? It's only SPS that's a pool. So the amount you produce is based on your share of the pool. So at the start, there's going to be less people producing, so you're going to expect to have a higher share of the pool. So you want to basically jump into SPS as soon as possible. Use your time crystals, use your grains, just start smashing out some occupied or legendary plots, and that's kind of the goal there. Over time, though, you're going to run out of the initial grains you saved from your boosts. You're going to run out of time crystals or whatever, and you want to start developing grains and research and whatnot. That's fine. But that definitely should be a secondary. Yeah.
So that is your strategy, is going after SPS hard and fast as soon as the gates are open.
Pretty much. The cards I have is enough to fill my occupied and legendary plots, maybe even epic plots. And then I just want to get because I'll be I think it'll probably launch at 5 a.m. or 6 a.m. local time. It always does. So I don't want to be spending 10 hours just clicking buttons. I want to be able to just, maybe spend a couple hours clicking buttons, putting all of my cards into what I want to produce SPS on, going to sleep, and then I'll wake up and do the grains and research and whatnot with whatever cards I have left, and just wake up hoping to see, I don't know, 50,000 SPS in the bank. Yeah.
I got to say, I'm a little surprised that you're gung ho on going after SPS. I kind of fully expected you to say research was going to be your primary target, given that Matt has repeatedly said and ad nauseum repeated research is his primary focus.
Yeah.
Full stop. So is there a deterrent there, or is it purely just trying to maximize that early potential and then slowly shift into something like research, or what's your kind of medium term plan?
So I'm a sucker for instant gratification. I get the SPS now.
You Gen Z, you Gen Zer.
Exactly. So that's waiting all the way till the Secret of Pretoria stuff, research stuff is released to get gratification. Oh, screw that. But no, jokes aside, I do assuming I don't have Lance 2.0 knowledge, purely based on what Matt's said publicly, I would be frothing over research as much as I am now. But at the same time, I feel like it's just an opportunity to get into SPS at the start. Okay, so this is a thing, right? I have a lot of resources in terms of lands and cards. I think I personally can afford to just ape into SPS, and I can actually work my research plots without actually swapping between SPS into research. For people who have limited resources, I guess because of the 3-day or whatever many day cooldown to actually swap producing from SPS into research, it might not be worth it, right? Because you have an additional cost that someone with a lot of plots don't have. What I can do is I can just start up all of my SPS plots first, and then I'll start up my research plots maybe a day later or something. I could also just start all of them at the same time, but I'm just lazy, I guess. For me, I value SPS at the start higher than research at the start. Since I don't have to do the swapping, I don't really lose much. I might lose 10 hours of research when I go to sleep instead of losing 3 days of research when I swap between SPS to research. long story short is, I guess, yes, research is definitely something I want to get into. Maybe not on day one, or maybe on day 1.5. And yeah, that's kind of my idea for lands at this stage, at least. And also like everything I do, including like, because like I've always had, I guess, information like additional information, I guess. Some of it may help with my decision making, some of it may not. But when I make a decision, I always think to myself, what would I do if I didn't have this knowledge? Because like no, like honestly, no one's monitoring me, right? Like Matt isn't looking through my transactions every day to see if I'm using privileged information, but it is a privilege to have privileged information. I guess it's in the name. Um, and like just out of respect, right? I don't want to be using this for like personal gain or anything. Like I feel like as long as Splinterlands is successful, given just how much skin I have in the game, I'll be fine. So yeah, ultimately my goal is just to add value. And for the people who are like wondering, like, oh, why weren't you fired? It's because I don't get paid. I don't. Yeah, as
Well,
simple as that.
speaking of privileged information, number one, it sounds like you've looked at the 2.0 white paper, at least the structure of it.
Yeah.
And I'd love to know if you kind of have, we've kind of heard hints that the 2.0 white paper is bound to come somewhat quickly on the heels of everything else that's coming down the pipeline. But longer term, have you been privileged to kind of hear the secret of Pretoria? Are you in the circle of trust that, as far as I know, consists of Matt himself?
Yeah, so I mean, a lot of this stuff I will say is subject to change. So whatever I hear, Matt's always like, "Oh, yeah, good, yeah." But it's always like, "Oh, but actually, maybe we'll change to this." So it's like
you get the same
anything.
asterisks as everybody else, essentially.
Exactly right. But it's even like a bigger asterisk because it's just like, because whatever you guys hear is like well thought out and planned already, and then it's like, okay, but this might still change because we need to cover our asses in case we change it. Whereas for me, it's literally like it's like brainstorming. So it's like it's even like a bigger asterisk. So it's like this will most likely change, or at least change in some like regard. Like the whole thing might not be flipped like 180, but it could be flipped. I don't know, 30. So yeah, there's always that. In terms like so basically I have heard bits and pieces. I don't really know exactly. I'll be honest, I don't really know exactly what's going on. In terms of when the 2.0 white paper is going to be released, yes, like Matt was planning to release it quite quickly afterwards. It wouldn't be like instantly or like a week, or maybe like it wouldn't be like a week or anything like that, but quite quick in the grand scheme of things. It's that was the plan, but I think like I kind of said like maybe let's not, or we can do like little teasers, or even like he could jump on shows like, for example, TPG, or like I don't know, Infidel, or Tales of Cryptomancer, or I don't know, just like shows like Splinterlands based shows, or even third party like AMAs or Twitter like spaces or whatnot. I can get him. Like I know J-Ron, I don't know, I'm sure many of your listeners would know J-Ron, but he's very well connected in this space as well. He can get Matt onto a lot of different like Twitter spaces that are quite well known in the Web3 community. I would love for Matt to be releasing alpha or releasing news on these sort of platforms, right? Because it's like a win-win. So these like these kind of spaces could be like, oh, we'll give you our audience, and then your native audience will listen to me as well. They could have like a big like big streaming session on Twitter for like little bits of hints on the secret of Pretoria. I don't know. So that's kind of been my take on this like whole release, because I feel even 1.5, right? It should be a huge marketing moment, right? We should be seeing like Splinterlands lands release on Cointelegraph, and like big influencers like making videos about their strategy and how to like optimize it, and you want to be seeing these videos by content creators here and there, and it should be a big marketing moment for Splinterlands, but we just haven't had the resources to really capitalize on any of this. I don't want to waste 2.0, because I'll be honest, I don't really see another big opportunity until 2.0 is released, which could be, I don't know, half a year, 5 years, like who knows, right? Like, even Matt wouldn't know like exactly how long that'll take. So I really want to milk like the release of the 2.0 white paper as much as possible. Like there are so many games out there with like billion-dollar market caps with just an idea. I wouldn't say so many. I mean, mainly like I guess Illuvium is one of them. That's like like a very high market cap, and that was before their game was even released, right? Like during the bull market, they had over 1 billion market cap, and that's just like like game in development. So yeah, no, I feel like there's a lot of potential there for marketing. Yeah.
Man, I love the idea of creating kind of the constant trail of hype throughout, whether it's a YouTube live or a Twitter space or, a third party AMA, and just the trail of Rooney profile photos kind of following throughout, man. Yeah, that's a good look. I hope Matt will embrace the philosophy of kind of release strategy there. Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see, obviously when we get the 2.0 white paper, we can kind of fill in the gaps of what is the expectation from 1.5 to 2.0 and hopefully kind of, have a better sense of what's coming between now and then.
Yeah.
I think you hit the nail on the head though, as far as the grain market. That's got to be coming quick on the heels of the 1.5 release. It feels like that's such an imperative piece of everything that is 1.5, and for that to be a miss, more people were pissed off about Rooney not being included in the 1.5 release than they were the grain market not being included.
Yeah. I don't know. Like I have a lot of Roonies. I think I won't release. I mean, I won't say how many because then you can just search up my wallet address. But I have a lot of Roonies, and I personally don't really care if they're in like 1.5, the very early 1.5 or not. I think people are just seeing it as like, oh, if it's not in 1.5, my Rooney value might go down. But in terms of utility, it's really like adding Rooney isn't really adding utility for the game. It's adding utility for Rooney, which is good, but not really pivotal. Whereas grain market, as you also mentioned, is actually pivotal to like how it works. That's the only real
it's
tradable
fundamental
asset.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's fundamental. Yeah Cool. Well, I'm let's shift gears once again. What is your kind of current thought process on Rebellion? Have you
Yes.
have you that side note, the big project that's coming down the pipeline just on the heels of 1.5? Have you kind of put together a plan of attack? Are you going to be designing a summoner? Are you ignoring it? What's your handling of the Rebellion release?
So yeah, a lot of people were interested in kind of my strategy for that because I mean it impacts their personal strategy. Am I going for a top six? Maybe they won't if I am. And I guess at this stage, my plans are to not go for a top six myself. This is purely because I don't know. I like my DECs. I feel sad parting with them. I feel sad that I parted with however many I parted with during the Chaos Legion sale where I bought like 150,000 packs. Still very sad about that. That's like what 400 million DECs or something. But I still don't have anywhere near that much, by the way. It's been saving for like I don't know how many months. But yeah, I just feel it's almost like PTSD buying packs after the Chaos Legion sale. I will still be buying though because FOMO, I don't want to be the only guy here without Chaos Legion, sorry, without Rebellion packs. I'm probably just gonna buy 2,300 or however much to get myself into top 30. I might do something else with someone else, but we'll see. So yeah,
That's not ambiguous at all.
no, not at all, not at all. But yeah, so that's basically my plans. I don't really like in terms of designing like a summoner. I've always told Matt to just like auction those off or something, like just like say like you can bid DCs and the highest six bids wins the summoner design. That's just a flat out like burning DEC opportunity. Same with promo cards, by the way. I think, companies or players should be able to bid for those promo card designs. I like Artemis the Bear, Varuz, or however you pronounce that card. It's pretty cool. Like I like that the little goblin stealing my SPS, or I don't know if he's mining my SPS for me or stealing it. But anyway, it's cool to see him as a card. But it'll be cooler to like know that someone burnt, I don't know, 2 million DECs for the next design. As we get bigger, maybe someone will burn 20 million DECs. Who knows? But yeah, that's kind of like my take on Rebellion. In terms of the actual cards, by the way, Matt, Matt told me about the idea of having summoners where you can choose your own like buff or debuff or whatnot, like before that was released, and I was incredibly excited about. I think that brings a whole new element to the game. With items and spells, I have I've got a little I wouldn't say little, but I've got a fair list of potential items and spells and how it would work. In terms of like crafting as well, I've put in a fair bit of like work into that side of things, even though I don't know how many months or years away. But I think that's kind of like the future of Splinterlands, is kind of like in that space where you get the second option. I'm personally worried about bots. I think anything a human can do, bots can do better. So I'm personally very worried that, because it's a lot of people, or maybe not a lot of people, but I have heard some people say that this could be the bot killer. I disagree. I think that this actually, in the short term, might be a bot killer. It might take them a few days to get back online, but when they get back online, they will, come back stronger. They will have optimized choices.
Yeah, you bring a great point up, and we heard the same thing about the introduction of 3 rule sets being the bot killer, and it worked for maybe 24 hours, and then they came back and just they just hand it to you. Yeah.
Exactly.
We've talked about that quite a bit, but I agree, man. The tactics is such a cool new mechanic. I'm excited to see that. You mentioned the burning and that 150,000 Chaos Legion pack purchase. I'm sure you're still sitting on a good chunk there. We've heard, and this is something that's kind of fallen by the wayside as far as talking points from Matt the last couple of public appearances, but he referenced the idea of sometime in Q1 organizing a burn to I don't know if the potential reward was for Rebellion packs, but something about providing some fair value longer term to something like a Chaos Legion pack. Are you planning on pursuing that as your means to picking up a significant chunk of Rebellion packs longer term?
So yeah, so I mean, if you're referring to the burning for Chaos Legion packs, is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, I think it was cards, it was packs.
Okay.
Just the next big burning events. The last one was for DEC. This next one is meant to be for cards and packs. And I thought that Chaos Legion packs was going to be a big focal point for what is meant to be burned.
Yeah, okay. So I can definitely share a bit about this, because I've actually written the proposal for this. Just waiting for Matt to give the green light to post it. So basically the idea there that I have, by the way, big asterisk, all subject to change. The idea here I have is that Chaos Legion. So I wanted basically to burn everything, right? Like alpha, beta, whatever. Matt's like, hang on, what's the point of that, right? It's, there's alpha, beta, all of those wild cards is already scarce. The only real problem we have is oversupply of Chaos Legion reward and Chaos Legion native packs and cards. And I'm like, oh, I guess you're right, because I thought so originally the idea was to just you can burn anything Chaos Legion edition, and then you get, points similar to DCs. When you burn DCs, you got points, and then you get leaderboard positions and rewards based on how many points you have. So that's kind of like the same infrastructure, but instead of getting points by burning DCs, you get points by burning cards. But I didn't like that, because the biggest holders of these cards are botnets, right? And you're basically giving liquidity and value to botnets here, which I didn't like. But Matt made a great point, and he's basically like, well, they're going to hold these cards like regardless, and they're going to sell these cards eventually regardless. They're not like, if they haven't sold already, they're obviously waiting for a better time, for a better price. So they're always going to be dragging us down, right? We need to basically get rid of them, right? It's get rid of them as soon as possible so they stop having this kind of like I don't know, like boulder over your head, just kind of like waiting to push it down or something. So I thought that's very logical. That's a very good point. But I didn't like how Reward and Chaos Legion packs were treated the same. So in my proposal, it's basically Chaos Legion reward cards. Commons are worth X amount, rares are worth Y amount, and whatever. Like every rarity and gold foil has different values. These values were actually based on a couple of things. So it took basically into consideration the total like supply of these cards and also the current like floor value of these cards. And that's how many points they were worth. And then for Chaos Legion, it's just worth double the points for compared to the reward cards. At the time of writing this proposal, which was about a month or so ago, it was more or less like that was more or less fine in terms of the actual like value compared to like just times two. Like Chaos Legion pack cards were approximately times two in terms of like the floor per per rarity. I'm not sure if they still are, but I would still like to basically, ensure that holds, because there's not much liquidity on market anyway, right? Like if someone spends like a couple $100, they could probably buy up like pretty much like all of the cards of like a common that's listed, maybe $300-$400 something. I don't know. I haven't checked the market, but yeah, like over time, like if one side is worth more or less than the other side, I'm sure that the cards like people would just go for whatever's most efficient on the market, or they'll just burn whatever they have without buying anything, and then try to chase the rewards like that. And yeah, that's basically what we have at the moment. So Matt was saying that, because there was that proposal made by someone else a while ago about, I think like card burning or something for titles. I forgot exactly what it was. But that didn't pass. And we were going to put this proposal through as like a secondary proposal or like an amended proposal. But then Matt was like, actually, let's wait until Lands 1.5, see what effect Lands 1.5 actually has on the card market. Maybe all of these Chaos Legion cards are just going to be used on lands. I'll be honest, I don't think so. Like if you do a cost benefit analysis of the amount of like, power core and like DCs to actually like staked DCs to actually work these cards and whatnot, it's simply not worth using like max level Chaos Legion cards on like a legendary plot. And it's also not really worth using, it's not really worth using common plots, like unless you have a bunch of unless you only have common plots and a bunch of like good cards, then okay, common plots are good. The cost basis is low, so you can essentially use the cost, like the savings there, to get better cards, and you might end up with more production than buying a rare plot, right? Maybe, depending on what type of cards you're using. But yeah, like I don't really see, like max level common Chaos Legion cards being used for lands all that much, because it's just too expensive to power them. It's like the same stake DC to get a max level gold foil alpha compared to like a max level regular foil Chaos Legion. Like, and the payoff is just not comparable. It's like orders of magnitudes higher for the max level alpha. So yeah, I think personally, this might be a bit biased again, not financial advice. I think alphas are undervalued at the moment for lands, and Chaos Legion cards are actually going to be not that useful, because unless SPS goes to like 5 cents or 10 cents, then I think the biggest upside we can see is from Chaos Legion, because it goes from being useless to absolutely like incredible. But if SPS stays around like the 1.8, 1.5 to 2 cent mark, then I don't know. Like personally, it's just all speculation. I'll be honest as well, I haven't really done like massive spreadsheets like I usually do. A lot of this is just very basic like spreadsheets. I haven't done a lot of like the simulating stuff that I would have done normally, but just been a bit busy recently. So yeah, this is like my opinion with not a lot of research, I'll be honest. So take it with a grain of salt.
It'll be really interesting to see. We've heard Chaos Legion. It's the cards in the Chaos Legion set. Their multiplier is going to stick around that 1.0 as far as their production value on lands. Rebellion is going to be a 0.5.
Yeah.
What's going to happen longer term? I mean, I feel like logically it makes sense to move as the edition gets more and more removed from being part of the modern era of cards. It makes sense to kind of gradually increase that multiplier. So maybe longer term, do you kind of foresee Chaos Legion being a little bit more valuable as a viable, kind of asset to stick on land, or do you expect that multiplier actually to reach closer and closer to zero?
Yeah, so in terms of a multiplier, if so like it's basically like a quality of life thing, right? It's all comparative. So if Chaos Legion multiplier is at 1 and I think Untamed was at 2. I can't actually remember, but let's just say Untamed is at 2 and Chaos Legion is at 1, and then everything scales the same from there. It's the same as saying Chaos Legion is at, let's say, 10 and Untamed is, let's say, at 20, and then Rebellion is, let's say, at 5. It's all like with respect to each other, if that makes sense. So as long as Chaos Legion multiplier doesn't increase with respect to anything else, it's actually the same effect, if that makes sense. So like it's not really a like a net net positive for Chaos Legion if they kind of like refactor Rebellion to be ×1 and Chaos Legion to be ×2 and then Untamed to be ×4. It'll still be the exact same amount of utility, even if the multiplier goes up. So I don't really foresee them changing the multiplier per se. I think as cards are produced, or as cards are released, in my honest opinion, I just think that at some point they just shouldn't be used for lands anymore. We have a finite amount of lands. The cards we have here, like at one point, will probably be like enough. I personally foresee kind of like creating. I don't know if this counts as inside info because I haven't even really shared this with Matt yet. This is just like, my personal thinking. But let's just say it's fine because I haven't shared it with Matt. I personally, what I want to see is like, I want to see cards being produced from lands made for lands. So people, for example, have these, 1,000 production power cards. They take a bit of time to basically, go into the crafting process, and they create a card that's lands only, can't be used for ranked, can't be used for anything. It's just lands only card. And when I say lands only, I mean like PVE, right? Like lands 3.0 or 4.0 hasn't even been talked about, but I still can't wait for a boss monster, right? I can't wait for like world raids, and like I can't wait for guilds to be like battling over some kind of like floating lands or something that's like a neutral territory. Like this is kind of like what I envision 3.0 to be like, but obviously that's, I don't even know how long in the future. Yeah, so I mean, for 2.0, I would really love to see these sort of cards that are native to lands, right? Like it'll have utility in lands 3.0, it has utility in lands 2.0, but it can't be used for Splinterlands, the actual game. That's what I would like to see, and that creates a lot of flexibility for these cards, right? It's like when you combine them, you could like over combine them for additional production power or something. You can do really creative things like merge different cards together to have like different like splinter bonuses for different like lands. But yeah, that's something that I've been kind of like developing in my mind that I was going to really pitch to Matt in the future. But for now, it's still just like something that I've just been thinking about in terms of like the future of lands. Because I don't want them to keep thinking about, oh, what are the implication of lands for these new set of cards, right? It's like at one point it's just like, okay, so this is a finite pool of land cards that we have that are also playable in ranked, and then we'll have some new cards that are producible from lands that are usable in lands. I don't know, like, what are your thoughts on that? Because this is the first time I've actually said this out loud.
Yeah, I mean, but don't we kind of need land to be a sink for cards in perpetuity, like sort of moving forward? I think that's kind of like the thing with land. Oh, it's great because as you cycle through these cards and people only want to play in modern. Instead of having
Yeah,
wild be the only return on investment on cards, you also have land being a return on investment on your cards, and that way it incentivizes people to actually buy new cards when new cards come out. And so that's
yeah,
my concern with that, saying, well, you can't use these. Maybe you do kind of what combine it where what you say, maybe you have to, instead of using those cards for land, maybe you have to burn those cards to be able to mint the land cards. Maybe that's a solution to that issue. But I just thought, like, moving forward, like, we need land to be a sink for cards, right? We need in some sort of way. So
absolutely. So that's a great point. And yes, so what you touched on there is exactly right. Like in terms of crafting, personally, I would love to see cards as being a crafting process. Instead of lands being a temporary sink, I would love crafting to be a permanent sink for cards. So that's kind of like the idea there. And in terms of like, so like at one point, right, maybe after Rebellion or after the expansion after Rebellion, I don't know, like we have a finite amount of lands. Like I don't like in the original sale, Splinterlands, the company actually reserved the right to mint two new additional continents. So technically, if they want, they could actually mint two completely new continents, right? And they have the freedom to make it a billion plots if they really wanted to. But I honestly don't see that happening. So I'm just operating under the assumption that there's a finite amount of plots, right? And with a finite amount of plots, that's a finite amount of card sync in terms of like being staked onto it. But
we raised this with
crafting,
we talked about this a little bit with Stever too, though, and he said, well, like one way they would do that maybe is likely to just say you can stake more cards on land than the five, right? Because they can increase the
that's
slots you
true.
can stake too, right?
That's very true. That's actually something so simple and obvious I never thought about.
I didn't think of it
Um,
either. I'm not taking credit. That
yeah,
was definitely a Stever who idea. But no,
yeah,
when he said that, I was
right.
like, oh yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That's probably a pretty
Yeah,
easy, like a value they change in the code, right? Where it's like,
exactly.
max of 5 to max of 10.
Yeah, I mean that's definitely true as well. Um, But I'll be honest, I'm still a bigger fan of burn compared to stake. And by stake, I mean like, like locking cards in lands or giving
Mhm.
a utility through that. I personally, because burning is, irreversible. Like once you've burnt it, it just can't come back. I feel like that's how scarcity is created. Staking, locking, whatever, you can always get it back, right? Staked SPS, you can always get that staked SPS back. Burned SPS, on the other hand, that's what I want to see increase. I don't think I've ever looked or even tracked the staked SPS ever, because like I don't really care how much rewards I'm getting because I mean obviously as more SPS is staked, I get less rewards, but it's still rewards. And what else am I going to do with it? Put it in liquidity pools? Well, yeah, but there's imperm loss. So, and I also need equal assets to pair it. And I'll be honest, I don't have a lot of like just free cash flow sitting around anymore, given how much like stuff I've just put in here and there. So, um, yeah, like I just stake my SPS now. I used to always add it in liquidity pools, but now I stake a lot of it. And what I really care about there is that burned amount. Like that's what I personally care about. And I know not everyone is the same. Like for example, with cards in BCX, I care about the number of BCX. Lots of people care about the number of like cards. I think I've always thought cards should be like a commodity. You should be able to uncombine cards and recombine them later. You should be like when you uncombine it, it should cost like 10% of the BCX plus a DC to uncombine it. But it's people have been incredibly against that idea, like just
Yeah.
absolutely like just hated it. One of the OGs said he'll quit if that happens. Like this is like a very OG. Another
Who
like
was it? You could
very
say.
Nah, I won't
No,
out him. But yeah,
Hep is out for
he said
blood.
I no, I feel like I'm gonna ask Azrakron if it was him, because that feels like something he would say.
but I'll tell you that it's someone you would not expect actually.
Okay.
So yeah, I would have never thought he would. I would have never thought he would be against the idea, and two, I never thought he would have quit Splinterlands over something like that. And there's also someone else who,
Maybe it's Dave,
um,
because Dave's the one person I know with the most like single BCX like alpha and beta cards.
I mean, I have a lot of those as well, but there was also someone else who implied that like we could get sued for it because we're changing like terms and conditions and whatnot, and implied that they'd like it's like a suable thing, and they would be very upset about it as well. Matt mentioned it'll be a very funny lawsuit to actually see. He'd be very interested to see that lawsuit. But at the same time, it's just like people are very against the idea of uncombining cards. Whereas I've like from day one, I've always thought that it's like you should be able to. It's like
Well,
nothing.
I to your point, I feel like if you own a level 4 maxed legendary card, you also own the level 1, the level 2, the level 3. You own everything from the base BCX to the max BCX. And yeah, I mean, I see your point. I'm a little surprised that that argument created such a polarized response and polarized to the extreme of I'm going to throw in the towel and retire. Like that's the end of my gaming days with
Everything creates that response in this game. What do you mean you're surprised?
I guess that's true, but that feels like such a I don't know. That feels like a win-win. So real quickly, we had you referenced the original proposal for the burn, the cards for the titles. I forget all the specifics, but there was some great commentary in there. And the one that specifically jumps to mind is from a buddy of the show, a buddy of yours down in Adelaide. Matt Clark dropped the idea of the kind of permanent burn mechanic on lands via a graveyard. Where you toss cards into the graveyard, and all of a sudden, X number of plots or a particular plot receives some sort of production bonus for some however many subsequent hours of production. Man, I would love to see. I think land is going to be such a great equalizer for the card market in general, and then if we can on top of that tack in a permanent burn mechanic, whether that's through minting cards or through achieving bonuses for production. I think land is still wide open enough and opens the realm for so much creativity to create and further perpetuate this card market equalizer approach to the economy that I'm really excited to see what's coming down the pipeline, and hopefully there's something around this permanent burn mechanic through one way or another that's included in 2.0.
I remember seeing that comment, and I absolutely love that idea. Like I actually mentioned it to Matt, and 1.5 is a bit too late to be added, but it's it's something that I've actually forgotten about, I'll be honest as well. Like it's I remember seeing it at the time. I'm like, holy shit, like this is something that I would love to actually put into 2.0.
And it's so simple. It's like the additional card staking on land. Like on the surface, it's such an easy idea that it slips the mind of most people, and then as soon as it's called out, it's like, oh man, that was right in front of us the whole time. Yeah, of course we should do that.
Exactly right. Like like the best ideas are often simple, like the wheel, right? It's not like you look at it like obviously a wheel, but like it's just the amount of like I can't imagine the amount of creativity for the first person to come up with it. So yes, I absolutely love that idea. And yes, the ultimate plan for lands is to be the great like it gives like utility to cards, right? It gives utility to everything. Like lands is an open playbook where everything should have utility, right? I mean, I don't know, like even packs, what if you can stake packs? Like there's so many things that if you can stake titles, why can't you stake packs? I just feel like, you're absolutely right. Like lands will be a great equalizer of like just everything, and it'll be a good just like a overall like positive thing to our ecosystem in terms of like value.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great tool to have, right? Because of its flexibility to be able to sink stuff, kill stuff, burn stuff. Yeah, it'll give it gives you kind of that thing where like you don't have to necessarily know everything that's going to happen 5 years in the future, because you've got this thing where you can twist it like a ball of wax to kind of meet your needs. So yeah, that is the true beauty of it. That and boss monsters, right?
Yeah, of course. Let's not forget. I mean, I wasn't even one of the OGs who bought it in the actual original sale, because I don't know, I was not very, like I didn't have a lot of funds back then. And I actually bought it off Randolph. He was just sick of waiting for boss monsters. Like that was I guess his dream. He's
And
always
when was this?
I mean, he probably quit. I don't know, like, or he quit at a pretty good time, to be honest. Like, actually, wait, did he? I forgot when he quit. It would have been year 2021 or 2020. If it was 2020, then that would have been unfortunate. But if it's 2021, then that would have been a good time, because that's when
Kudos.
everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, I forgot exactly when he quit, but a few years ago at the very least, like a couple years. I could probably search it up on Discord, to be honest.
Well, yeah, I mean, the main point is it's been a few years, and I saw shout out to our buddy Floey. He was on a couple of months ago, and I saw he very recently listed the rights to his boss monster, made it available for purchase.
Is that tokenized? Did they tokenize that, or what is that?
I don't think so. No.
Like, how do you get that like? Like, how do you buy that? Like, how do you agree to sell it? Does he just have to like Discord message Matt like, hey, I just sold this to Cryptoeater? Yeah, basically. Okay,
that's exactly right. So I can actually, I basically at the time we messaged Aggro, we messaged Aggro and we were like, can we change this? And he was like, yeah, sure, I'll just give you the role on Discord. And yeah, like I'm actually reading our chat now, and we made the trade in February 2021. And yeah, wow, it was his whole account actually, including like plots, totems.
Man, you are the
packs.
Cryptoeater, bro. You're freaking Pac-Man.
yeah. People call me Pac-Man with a K, because I eat up all the packs. Yeah.
Nice, dude. So let's talk about that, man. We've had a couple. We've been fortunate to have Cryptomancer on. He talked a little bit about a boss monster that he wanted. He had in his mind's eye. Floey gave, obviously at this point it's irrelevant, but he shared some of his insight in terms of what he was thinking around his boss monster. Have you given any real consideration? I mean, given that there's, who knows when boss monsters is actually coming to land, but have you, are we going to see a giant Pac-Man strolling across Praetoria?
I'll be entirely honest with you. If I can sell the design rights for like 10K, I'll take it. I haven't really thought too much about the creative side. I would think that if I do actually end up designing it myself, I would probably dedicate it to one of the projects I'm working on. That's another thing. I think like marketing and like, cross marketing is something that Splinterlands hasn't tapped into, like product placement. Like why isn't, I don't know, like Alchemist the Bear wearing a pair of Vans, right? Maybe Vans could pay us for that. Yeah, I think that's something that's untapped. Something that Splinterlands could be doing a lot more of. I mean, a lot more of beforehand, maybe less so now, given how small our actual audience is. But once we are big again, I think I would love to have like an actual like business type thing in the market, or not in the market, sorry, like in the game. Maybe like for Aqualis, we have these little characters called Aqualians or Aqualians. I don't even know how to pronounce it. I type it. I never say it out loud. But they're like little like aquatic alien things, which we are hoping to incorporate when in the future when we make like, because I mean I would love to make a game like Aqualis. Like, I mean, back to the whole Aqualis thing. It's like it's not made to be a DeFi protocol. It's made to be a brand. DeFi just happens to be our bread and butter. Like, that's our original kind of protocol. But ultimately, we want to be expanding into like GameFi, want to be expanding into maybe like a full scale AMM. Personally, I'm very interested in developing like on the frontier of technology, which is like, these like layer twos and stuff. Maybe if we have enough clout, people are willing to work with us and get paid in AQL tokens or something to basically make like the next generation of layer twos or something. I don't know. I mean, this is probably also like, many, many, many years in the future. But yeah, I would love to see like if I do end up making the actual character, it'll probably be based on whatever project I'm working on. And if not, I'll probably try to sell it.
Nice. Yeah, we'll see. We'll see what it's worth when that day comes.
Yeah, exactly. I reckon. I wonder what it's like to have two boss monsters. Like, I mean, I'll buy Flowies, and maybe they'll have to make a new title for me and just say Boss Monster X2. I don't know.
Oh man, yeah, I can't get the vision of Artemis wearing Vans out of my head. That's I'm imagining Nate like, oh, just trying to, he has a problem enough with seeing the cute Byzantine kitty and Lily out there. I wonder what the creative side of Nate would respond to seeing Artemis done into
the bottle of Coke.
Yeah, I was just
Coke
thinking
sledding
that.
down the hill. Yeah, dude.
Yes, I literally just thinking that, it's like in a pair of Vans drinking a bottle of Coke. Like, yeah, that's the future of Splinterlands I want to see.
Yeah, that's the picture of selling out, but ultimately that's what we're in it for, right? Like, that's
yeah. Like, honestly, like people say selling out is like frowned upon, but I honestly think that's how a Web3 game becomes sustainable. Like, it's a closed loop system where the amount of money coming in needs to be greater than the amount of money going out for us to even stay at the same value, right? Because we have to pay for servers, we have to pay for employees, we have to pay for, I don't know, like TerraBlock. Like, there's so much stuff that people are paying for, right? Even if you want to get in the game, you're paying money to crypto.com to buy SPS, and when you sell, you're paying more money to crypto.com. So it's like there are so many inefficiencies in the market that we need so much more capital flowing in than going out just to retain the same value. If we don't sell out, then by definition, it's almost like it's doomed to fail eventually, because at some point we're going to have like the reverse momentum when everything's going up, right? And then starts going down. And then if that's just going to keep going down more and more, because we're not going to have the momentum. Like, we don't have anything to bring the momentum back up. And like, selling out is how we kind of get that momentum. It's how we, like, I guess, like when we're going up, it's how we continue that momentum up. And then if we get to a point where the value isn't flowing in as much as the value going out, well, we still have this, external source of income where that value flows in without players losing money. Because right now, every time I sell something, it's a player that gives me money. Every time I earn a reward for something, if I want to sell that into money, someone out there has to buy that, right? Someone loses money. Like, if I say I've made $50 from Splinterlands, it's because someone else out there would have lost $55 from Splinterlands. It's not sustainable. In terms of like the actual product, Matt and the team, building it and everything, it's creating like enterprise value for the ecosystem. It's creating like an actual like it's creating like objective value. We might not be able to quantify the value. For example, how much should SPS be worth? How much is the brand Splinterlands worth? Well, I don't know. I'm sure, maybe there are like valuers out there or lawyers or something who can give a good answer, but I don't know. For us, like, for the, like, the mainstream people, it's just a matter of speculation. And yeah, like without some sort of outside source of income, it's just purely like, even if you have the best game in the world, but there's not enough, but there's just more people selling than buying, then asset prices are going to go down. It's going to create a bit of a domino effect where people lose faith and lose, like, it's not as fun earning SPS when SPS is worth a cent compared to if it's worth $1. So yeah, that's kind of why I think selling out is probably the only way for any real Web3 game to like be sustainable in the long term. because like it's different from Web 2, where if you buy a game, your mind is like, okay, I will lose money here because obviously if I go and buy Diablo 4, I don't expect to earn money from it. I'm just spending money to buy it. Whereas here, people are always like, I want to earn money from this. Well, if that's your mindset going in, and that's everyone's mindset going in, then no one like you can't have everyone winning in that circumstance unless you sell out. Then that's the only like opportunity. Like it's not even guaranteed, of course, but that's the only possibility where everyone could or everyone might win. Yeah. Anyway, that's my sorry. That's a bit
No,
of a
well,
rant.
no.
No,
Well said, man. I think
totally
selling
agree.
out is got to be the name of the game, right? Like if we can have branded, a Qualis Arena, for example,
Yeah.
something like that, just bringing, real world companies into Splinterlands, and all of a sudden creating value for everybody who's involved, and by definition, that's yeah. I think
Yep.
it's got to
I've
be
said it
part of the plan.
before. Yeah, I mean, I've said it before in here, and I know the team has talked about it a little bit and said that, not really against it. It doesn't really work out well, but like I'll take pop-up ads or whatever in between, like while you're waiting for matches. Like, I mean, sitting
Yeah.
there for 10, 15 seconds while I'm waiting for a match to start, like show me an ad, like, let the team make some money, let money into the game,
Yeah. I
yeah,
mean, like
that's the way
honestly,
going forward.
you're exactly right. Like I think other people have mentioned this, like, well, give me 1 credit and I'll watch an ad. Like even if the team makes like 10 credits or 5 credits worth of like like revenue, even if I just get 1 credit, I'm gonna sit there spamming ads, like,
I'd do it for energy, like, like if it's,
yeah, like
if you're
I mean,
playing the game or whatever. Yeah.
exactly. So like I mean, that's exactly right. Like I personally don't mind these sort of things. It's necessary, I think, for the company to survive into the future. Sorry, I've been talking a lot, so throat's feeling a bit funny. But yeah, no, like yeah, absolutely. I think like selling out is like a name of the game. Next bull run, next time SPS is back at $1, not financial advice. I want to be seeing more branded stuff.
Yeah.
Let's kind of wind it down there. So we've asked a couple of folks in the past, like, where do we see SPS going, and what is kind of the ideal player base number? So somebody asked this question to Matt on Town Hall Town Square not too long ago, and he kind of gave the very unclear answer of as many as possible. Obviously, but what is the like what is a real achievable number in your mind in terms of real players that are playing the game, for
Yeah.
us to kind of see that exit velocity towards these sorts of things, and the associated SPS price?
Yeah, so this is gonna bring me down a rabbit hole again. But it ultimately, I think, like the potential for Splinterlands, I think, is incredible. Like, the ecosystem that has been built here, the game itself, I'll be honest, like it's not amazing. Like if it didn't have SPS rewards, I don't know if I would be playing it all that often. Like Hearthstone, for example, like I played for a fair bit and then I got bored after like half a year anyway. So it might just be an attention span issue. But yeah, like I think in terms of like the tokenomics, the game fi, like game finance, the play to earn it, everything that's been built here, the core tokenomics with SPS and DC, the whole flywheel effect, the different aspects between ranked, like tournaments, guilds, lands, like all of these different like little bits and pieces that's been put together, and then just the sheer potential of lands like PVE. I think that PVE is a huge like aspect that is completely untapped by Splinterlands at the moment. I love PVE games, right? I don't PvP like I mean, to be fair, I guess I play more PvP games at the moment, but I've always enjoyed PvE games, to be honest, like probably more. Yeah, I think I can't wait for Splinterlands to have that sort of aspect. If we can achieve all these things, I think the only limitation then is Hive, like the Hive blockchain. How many transactions per second can Hive actually handle? Maybe by then we would have our own SPS chain, And then SPS chain might have, other games running on the SPS chain, and SPS could be like, like the whole Invenium platform. It could even be like an Invenium chain. I don't know. Instead of powering up Hive to get resource credits, you could power up SPS to get resource credits. I don't know. And then they could do some kind of like blockchain level changes to make it more scalable. Just magically happens. I don't really know how it works technically, but yeah, that's kind of like the idea. Or even like, how it's similar to like a layer 2 where you have like a sequencer and then it just relays the information back onto Hive, whereas SPS chain could be a layer 2. I don't know. So like if we can kind of account for that, I would say like, I don't know, like because the thing is like if we have 100,000 real players, we're probably going to have 10 million bots. I don't know, like a lot, right? That's always like bots, I think is always going to be an issue. The more successful the game becomes, the more popular we get, the amount of bots would grow exponentially, because it's just like if we become popular, then it becomes more and more profitable because their fixed costs are the same, right? Like, the server costs, that's like a fixed cost for them. I guess renting is a variable cost, but like right now, like, is the SPS rewards even worth the server costs? They're barely breaking even. So if SPS goes up, then it's going to be much, much, much more profitable for them. Like, if SPS goes up 10%, it might be 100% more profitable because their profit margin might double, even if their revenue only goes up 10%. So I see bots as a huge problem, like a huge, huge problem in the future if we actually get big again. Because when we got big the first time, these bots were learning how to these botnets and these people creating these botnets were just learning how it works, right? They see an opportunity, they learn. Whereas now they have the expertise, they're just waiting for the next bull run. But anyway, that aside, I think in terms of realistic numbers, like as many as possible, right? I don't know. Like I don't know enough about how many users, like traditional Web 2 games has to really make a comparison. I wouldn't really be able to tell. In terms of market cap, in terms of SPS price, I always think about it as market cap. I honestly wouldn't be shocked if everything like, in like in best case scenario, like, I don't know, maybe 1% chance of happening, of course, but like I wouldn't be shocked if SPS is at like a $1 billion market cap. Like 3 billion tokens, 1 billion market cap. Let's say by the time we achieve that, it might be 10 years from now or 5 years from now. Let's say 20% of all SPS is burned. I don't know if that's too much or too little, but with DECs staying at peg, I expect to see a lot more SPS burns in the future. But let's say only 10% of SPS is burned and we're at $1 billion market cap. Just quick maths, like 1 billion divided by 2.7 billion. How much would that be? I don't know, like 30 something cents, like 37 cents. I don't know. That would be I think a realistic target in the long term. That's like, people would say, wow, that's like for a very optimistic estimate, that's not even that much. It's only times like 20 something or 30 something. But I guess my thing is just that like during that time, you get staked SPS, you get rewards from that. You get like, your cards would also go up in value, like everything, like it's kind of like a snowball effect. So yeah, that's kind of my very, very long rabbit hole answer to your question that doesn't really answer the first part anyway.
Yeah, thanks for that. Yeah, it's interesting you call out the if we achieve that 100,000 player mark, to expect 10 million bots. I think if we look back and at the historical data, it's pretty, I think at this point it's pretty much a foregone conclusion that there's about 5,000 real players in Splinterlands right now. And at its peak, we saw 500, 600,000 daily active users, and that's pretty much 100 to 1, which would be that 100,000 player base with 10 million bots, which holy smokes. I mean, those are some big boy numbers right there. But yeah, I mean, the math supports it. If that's kind of the historical data baseline, 10 million bots, geez Louise.
Yeah, I mean, can you imagine all the Hive like yeah, trying to post an article on Hive and it's 3 minutes delayed because I don't know, bots are trying to choose their tactics.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I mean now, yeah, there's going to be different. The level of transactions per each game is going to increase with these different mechanics.
Yeah, I don't think games are processed
Oh, because
on
they
chain
process them
anymore.
off. Yeah, they process them
Yeah, so they move
natively,
that
and
off
then they
chain.
put it on the cherry. Right?
Yeah, I think that's how they work now. But still, it's like I mean, I can't imagine how much their servers are going to cost. Like, I don't know how they can afford that unless they sell out, right?
Yeah.
Hmm. All right. Well, Cryptoeater, is there anything else that is kind of burning a hole in your pocket you want to get out there for the chat or for listeners out there to hear? What's kind of last thoughts for you?
Yeah, I mean, last thoughts. Go check out the Aqualis market, 2.8% cashback. That's always cool. If
And
you have any,
the token pre-sale is just on the Hive engine, right?
yes, that's right. So if you're interested in that, you can search up the ticker PAQL, which stands for proxy AQL. The idea there is basically once we actually go live, you'll be able to exchange it 1-for-1 for the actual token. We're not sure if we want to airdrop it or just let you exchange it because we're worried people would get the airdrop and then try to sell their proxy token or something, which are worthless. But anyway, we'll see. Yeah, so yeah, go check that out. The price is meant to be 10 cents, but since it's on Hive Engine, it's volatile. So we every now and then we reprice that in terms of Hive to make it back to 10 cents. And yeah, that should be there for another few weeks at the very least. And yeah. Oh yeah, and also forgot Twitter. 20K DC giveaway. You should
What's the Twitter
definitely.
handle?
It's just Aqualis DAO, so AQUALIS DAO. And if TPG wouldn't mind sharing that, you could also be in the chance, like in the running to win.
Absolutely.
And they can just find it through your Twitter.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll get it out there, man. Don't worry. We don't mind. Awesome. Well, dude, we always enjoy having you hop on. It's been a long time coming. Welcome back anytime. Yeah, thoroughly enjoyable. Last couple of hours with you. Always appreciate the insights and yeah, very good. Some good stuff. In summation, it doesn't sound like you're bullish at all, Cryptoeater. I don't know what's going on. Like, what do we have to do to get you to turn bullish again? But
yeah, I don't know. I mean, everyone should be selling right now, so I can may or may not be buying more. Who knows? If you want to sell any decks at 50% off, message me.
Awesome. Well, hope you guys enjoyed the episode. Thanks for stopping by. You have been listening to
The People's Guild.